Honestly, I screamed, holy crap. That was unbelievable just to see the way he tossed that guy. That was probably one of the meanest stiff arms I've ever seen, no doubt.
I've been doing too many curls, so I gotta lay out the arms.
Yeah, I don't think Derrick Henry has to worry about losing any strength, whether he lays off the curls or not. The guy is chiseled out of granite, and he put Josh Norman down on the ground in a way that you rarely see one grown man do to another. And Josh Norman is not small.
No, he's not a small
6 feet.
corner. You're right.
Yeah, and down he went, and down went the Buffalo Bills. And who would have seen this one coming? The Tennessee Titans, with 16 days between games, manhandling the Buffalo Bills 42-16, sending the Bills to their first loss. We're going to be talking about that and plenty more. The show is Pro Football Talk Live. Hello to our audience on Peacock, Sirius XM 211, the re-air on NBCSN at 9 a.m. Eastern, where at least 90% of what you will be seeing and hearing is still fresh. And 7 o'clock local time, UK and Ireland, Sky Sports NFL. Great to be with everyone. Also, the podcast audience, which gets very miffed if I don't mention them. Hello, podcast audience. We hear you. We see you. Not really, but we care.
Yes, we do
and
care.
We definitely care about the Bills, Chris, because they got a problem after last night. My God, what in the world happened to your boy Blue and the rest of his teammates?
It was an off night. I mean, first off, I think the first thing that needs to be talked about is what you started off saying. The Tennessee Titans, that was pretty unbelievable. Just to come out there and play like that without practicing, doing that. You know, football is just not one of those sports that you can usually pull that off to where you can play a game and not have mistakes and execute the way they did. I mean, we didn't see really blown coverages or, missed assignments as far as missing a run block or pass protection. I'm amazed by that. And then I think what also made the game, even more in favor of the Tennessee Titans is, yes, it was an off night for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. I mean, across the board. Hey, first series of the night. He throws a ball. Is it perfect? No, but the receiver's got two hands on it. Interception. Next series, punt it. Big punt return, short field, Tennessee Titans. So it was all over. It was penalties. It was drops. Josh Allen made some stupid plays himself. The defense, which we've talked about a little bit, is being exposed to a degree, and I think there's some issues there that we need to talk about. But I still think the big story of the night, it was disappointing. Buffalo, we were expecting a better game and a better showing from them, but man, I can't get over Mike Vrabel. It speaks to him and how he kept the team together and the guys he's got in that locker room for them to go out there and play like that. I'm pretty amazed by it.
And it really is impressive how the Titans found a way to turn everything that's been going on for the last 16 days into a point of motivation. And that speaks to great coaching. Great coaches can find anything, and they'll make something up if they have to. It's the Michael Jordan approach. And they'll convince themselves it's true even if it's not. In this case, the criticism of the Titans. And we saw flashes of it when Ryan Tannehill spoke to the media over the weekend. There was some of that frustration starting to come out. And in hindsight, I wish I'd have looked at it and said, there's your clue, that they're getting themselves riled up and ticked off over the fact that so many people are saying, you guys broke protocol. You guys aren't buttoned up. You guys were practicing when you shouldn't have practiced. You guys have done a lot of things you shouldn't have done. Now, here's the reality. Most of that was coming from the league telling all the other teams what they were going to do to the Titans. We'll talk more about that coming up later in the program. But we were all pre-positioned to think that the league was going to hammer the Titans, and that's what created this sense that everyone's wagging their finger at the Titans, and they used that to get themselves pissed off at the world, and whatever it takes to do what they did last night, 42-16, whatever it takes, do it, bottle it, hope it's still there every week for the rest of the season, because that's the kind of thing that can carry you to a special season. I have a feeling it's not going to last, but they made the most of it. Their toughest game so far, they were not impressive in their 3 wins against teams that all aren't very good. They play an undefeated team, and they mopped up the floor with them, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, mopped up the floor. I do think the score's a little misleading, but either way, they took their souls out at the end of the game and stomped on it to make sure you knew who the boss of that football game was, right? I mean, they really did. And, yeah, I mean, motivation, all that stuff, sure, I get it. I'd be doing the same thing. And, yeah, I was mad at the Tennessee Titans. I mean, I think you were too. We heard they were being careless. I think that bothered us. Also, though, I defended them when it came to practice and doing those things. What do you expect them to do, right? We knew it. They knew they were going to be held accountable to what we saw on Tuesday night, no matter what, whether it was practice, in the facility, whatever. So they did that. Hey, it's cool. It's amazing that they find that motivation, and Vrabel's great at pushing the buttons and doing all that. I just still, the fact that they pulled it off and no turnovers and things like that, where Buffalo looked like they were the team that hadn't practiced and done meetings and things like that. I think that was shocking to me, Mike. And then, I think the other thing that I looked at more than anything, I mean, Vrabel, he's awesome as far as game plan specific things he does on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm excited to watch that film. But, facing off against Brian Daboll, who has that New England system. Of course, Vrabel knows it very well. Had success against Josh McDaniels 2 years ago and even last year in the playoffs, of course. So I think they did some things that probably other teams haven't done to Buffalo. I'll be interested to see what that is. And I don't know if you heard my dad at halftime. The first thing that jumped out to me in the game was how much bigger Tennessee was than Buffalo. I mean, Tennessee you kind of said it. Derrick Henry looks as big as the defensive lineman on Buffalo. That was concerning to me, where if you think about Buffalo being a big-time playoff Super Bowl contender, it made me think twice a little bit about them, especially the way they looked up front on that defensive side of the ball.
Well, Derrick Henry didn't have a huge night from a yardage standpoint. He did have a huge night from a putting a guy on his rear end standpoint, and it gave that team a lift. And Sean McDermott, after the game, the coach of the Bills, repeatedly said they beat themselves. I watched all of his press conference before the show. They beat themselves. He wants to give credit to the Titans, but they beat themselves. Poor discipline, poor pre-snap discipline, poor fundamentals, poor with the turnovers, and you're just not going to win a game like that. And he didn't see it coming. He didn't expect it. He makes no excuses for the uncertainty that hovered around the game. But at the end of the day, his guys weren't ready. The Titans were ready, and it showed. And one thing that McDermott kept mentioning, the inability of the front four to create pressure. And, of course, that's a problem going into their next game Monday night against a Chiefs team that's coming off of a loss that's going to be as desperate, if not more desperate, than the Bills. All of a sudden, that Monday night first half of the doubleheader with two 4-0 teams that are now 4-1 and that have extra urgency to avoid going to 4-2 is huge, Chris. And because the Bills looked so bad defensively last night relative to what we expect, they got to get this fixed. And they have one less day to do it than they ordinarily would have had because they had to play Tuesday night and they got to turn around and play on a Monday.
Yeah, I mean, the defense is an issue. I don't think there's any doubt about that. We saw it kind of rear its ugly head against the Los Angeles Rams, right? We saw them run the ball and gash Buffalo at certain points of the football game. The Raiders had success too. Now, the Raiders, what hurt them too is the fact that they were missing some receivers in that game, and that allowed Buffalo to crowd the box a little bit more than maybe they would have been able to if Henry Ruggs was out there and everything like that. But last night, I mean, they have a real issue. They can't get pressure on the quarterback with 4. And the other thing they're doing is now they're always blitzing 5 or 6 guys, and you see how open the middle of the field is and some of the throws Ryan Tannehill makes. I hate that approach. I hate the 5- and 6-man blitz. I'd rather you go the opposite. Do what Tennessee did to Josh Allen. You see? They were rushing 3 and rushing 2 and doing stuff like that. That's the way to go there. But ultimately, Mike, they have a flaw in their defensive scheme in Buffalo. Too many plays end up back on the plate of number 24, Teron Johnson. Too many. And he's the nickel cornerback, right? And I'm talking about run game and pass game, Mike, where I find it, all my teachings from John Gruden and Josh McDaniels and people where, okay, they're playing this defense. What's the flaw to this defense? Too many of the times he's put in the position to be the flaw. whether it's the run game or covering A.J. Brown with no help around him, and A.J. Brown just gets to run across the field. And that's something they're going to have to fix out. That's cool if you want to play that defense, but then you better have Jamal Adams or Derwin James playing that position, not Teron Johnson. So they got to get some things figured out because their defense has not looked good really the whole year.
Yeah, all it takes is one weak link like that gets exploited over and over and over again until you do something about it. The team is not going to feel sorry for you that they have found a weakness in your secondary, and they're going to continue to throw in that direction until something is done to improve it. We put up a graphic earlier, and this just puts into context how impressive it is what the Titans did. First team to score a touchdown on every red zone possession with a minimum of 6 of them, have 0 turnovers, allow no sacks since the Patriots beat the Bills 56-10 in Week 11 of the undefeated season of 2007. And, of course, Mike Vrabel, coach of the Titans, for this attempt was a member of the Patriots when they did it to the Bills, and the poor Bills on the wrong end of the last 2 times it's happened. Now, it's a very specific stat, and it's like every week you find some specific, unique thing that's never happened before, but that's still impressive.
Very.
For the first time in 13 years to see that kind of performance, that kind of red zone efficiency, it speaks to the failures of the Bills because that's the area where, number one, it should be easier to defend because you don't have to worry about anyone getting behind you. It's all packed in. And number two, the stakes are higher, far higher than they are when you're on the other 20-yard line.
Yeah, you're not used to seeing those type of issues with a Buffalo Bills defense or a Sean McDermott defense. I mean, the one thing that's been very consistent since he's taken over there is their defense has played sound and been a pain in the butt for everybody. And we are seeing issues across the board there. And, yeah, the Tennessee Titans, first off, they got the short field. That was the one big thing. But where they're weird is they're a big play football team. I mean, that's the one thing I think as I'm sitting there watching the game last night, too, I'm going, I don't give them enough credit for that. They really are. We think about them as this ground and pound, but, turnover margin, number 1 in football. Explosive plays, I think they're number 1 in football, or they're towards the top of the league or something like that. And that's because Ryan Tannehill never leaves any yards out in the field. I mean, as you saw last night, if there's a 40-yard completion to be had and the guy's open by 3 inches, he throws it in there, and it's a 40-yard completion. Same with the touchdowns. They're aggressive that way, and they look to make those type of plays, and it's why between their game plan specific and then their aggressive nature really on both sides of the ball, it's why they're made for playoff football, and they're going to be a pain in the butt this whole year if they continue to kind of play the way they did last night and wipe away some of those early season struggles we saw.
Ryan Tannehill was a top 10 pick back in 2012, the year Andrew Luck was the first overall quarterback, the year that Russell Wilson arrived in round 3. And what happened is, I believe, the narrative around Ryan Tannehill has been so baked into the DNA of the football fan and the person who covers football.
That's right.
That we resist what is before our very eyes. And that is a guy who is becoming or has become an elite quarterback. Chris, last night, 21 for 28, 195 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, passer rating of 129.3. He added 42 yards rushing on 4 attempts with a touchdown. He's smart about when he runs. He's fast. When he decides to roll out of the pocket, he's not rolling. He's sprinting out of the pocket. I mean, this guy can move. And I'll stand by what I said earlier this year. He looks different.
He does.
There's something about him, and maybe he's just filled out after 8 years in the NFL, but his neck is thick and his jaw seems more, protruding. Like it's like he went from being Clark Kent to Superman at some point over the last 8 years. Am I wrong?
Well, when you say there's something different, I take it more as like there's just this confidence and calmness about him ever since like week 12 last year, where you just feel like they show the camera in big situations, and he just kind of has that look in his eye where you go, he's not even the slightest bit bothered or flustered, or actually seems quite confident. I mean, there was a shot on him last night on, I think, a second down play. He was smiling as he was underneath the center. It looked like some linebacker was talking trash to him, and he was kind of laughing and giggling about it. So that just tells you how in the moment he is, and that the game has slowed down. And as we've always talked about, you can be a really, really good football player and be stuck in a bad situation or not have the support around you that can ever show or accentuate the great things you have about your ability if you're stuck in the wrong situation. And like we saw with Minkah Fitzpatrick in the Miami Dolphins, now he's one of the best safeties in football, goes to Pittsburgh. Well, here we go. Ryan Tannehill, same kind of thing. Got put with the right support, got the right game plan and system around him, and now he's taking full benefit, and hopefully people are opening their eyes to go, damn, this guy is a top 10 quarterback in football. I mean, it's really kind of impossible to deny at this point after the last, year or so.
And this cuts against the trend that we've seen in the NFL in recent years, really for the last 20 years, where you expect the guy to figure it out right away. And if you don't, you're thrown to the curb. This is a guy who was a receiver at Texas A&M. He played quarterback for 1 year before the Joe Philbin Dolphins made him a top 10 draft pick in 2012. And he was starting to come into his own in 2016 with Adam Gase until he takes a low hit from Calais Campbell. The ACL is compromised. It's partially torn. Well, it's not going to heal itself. They made the fateful decision not to get it repaired after the 2016 season. Training camp 2017, there it goes, and there it went for Ryan Tannehill in Miami. And now it's amazing to think what the Dolphins had. They had to pay part of his salary to unload him onto the Titans. Right? And remember when Marcus Mariota is the starter, it's like, oh, Ryan Tannehill. I mean, Marcus Mariota is the starter. Well, I mean, you saw it from the get-go. Hey, Marcus Mariota's not going to be the starter for very long if Ryan Tannehill can figure things out. And it's just amazing what he's done the last 2 years. And it's amazing what this Titan is. We see the Nike-fication of the NFL, and I'm not that should have been on the PFT bingo card. My reference to the constant uniform changes made by the NFL now. But this is proof that a good team can make a bad uniform look a hell of a lot better. And, man, those Titans uniforms are looking damn good right now, aren't they?
Well, they got a little bit of an aura and a toughness to them. Like, I don't know what it is. I was not in favor of, the all-blue helmet. I was on a Tennessee Titan team for 2 years.
It's like a bowling ball.
Right.
Looks like a bowling ball.
It does.
Where are the holes?
It looks like a bowling ball. And the fact that it looks like it's COVID-19 on the side right now is not a good look for them either.
Well,
I mean, it's kind of a double whammy. It became a NFL meme there for a little bit. But there's an aura there about just a big, tough, physical team. And when they wear that all blue or whatever, they just look kind of mean and tough. And then, hey, their head coach is mean and tough. And that's the way they play. They got an attitude about them. They don't blink ever. They're always physical. They're creative. Sometimes they mess some things up, as we've seen in the first few weeks, to where, they blow a gasket because they'll do 1 week cover threes this, the next week cover threes a totally different type of coverage because we made it more specific to this game plan, and they mess things up. But I think as the season goes and the more this team plays together and Jadeveon Clowney keeps coming along and all that, they're a team that I think I probably even undersold early in the year where I go, uh-oh, they might be one of the best teams in the AFC. There's no doubt.
Well, they were a Final Four team last year, and right now they're 4-0. For the second time in franchise history, the other time the Tennessee Titans were 4-0, Christopher David Simms.
I was there.
Was a member of the roster. And that was the year that came down to that December game. I think it was a Saturday game, wasn't it?
It might have been.
Steelers at Titans. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Steelers at Titans, and the 1 seed is riding on it, and the Titans win. And it was Keith Bullock and Lendale White desecrating the terrible towel. And that curse stuck to the Titans for several years. I think they ultimately had an exorcism, or they made a donation to the whatever the charity is that benefits from the proceeds of the terrible towel. They desecrated the terrible towel. It hovered over that team for several years, and started with that loss to the Ravens in the divisional round, which was a stunner. I mean, the Titans were one of the best teams in football that year.
There's
and
no doubt.
Who ended up winning the Super Bowl that year?
The Steelers. I know.
Yeah.
The damn Steelers won it. Right. And, we played them in a Week 15 game, and I was just sitting over there holding the clipboard. But that was the best football team I was ever on. I think you've heard me say that before. It was Albert Hainsworth was arguably the best defensive player in the game. Keith Bullock was phenomenal. We had Cortland Finnegan and Michael Griffin at safety. We had a lot of good football players, let alone CJ2K and Kerry Collins and Kenny Britt. And, I mean, that was a heartbreaker for me. That really was. But definitely this team looks like it could rival that team a little bit.
Did you have any role or responsibility in the desecration of the terrible towel?
No,
Yes or no?
Absolutely
Did
not.
you try to stop it? Did you try to stop it?
No. There is no stopping those guys on that team. There's no guy. There was not, and I was the new guy on the team. I certainly wasn't going to be able to stop it. That was a fun team. Lendell and Keith Bullock and them, we had some personalities, and I certainly wasn't going to get in the middle of it.
Let's flip it over to your boy Blue,
Yeah.
Josh Allen. Give him a letter grade for last night.
Oh, probably I'd say a C, somewhere in there. Maybe a C plus, something like that. Now,
C plus. C plus.
He had some.
You know what C plus is?
No.
You know that reference?
No. Yeah, what is it?
That's the grade Ralphie got on his paper where he tried to make the argument to his teacher that he should get a Red Ryder carbine action BB gun.
I got you. I remember that now.
Stock
yes.
and this thing that tells time. He got a C plus.
Right.
One of the great lines, and this is American literature. I don't think a football is a very good Christmas present. That was one of the lines.
Oh, whatever.
C plus paper.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Sorry, they're wrong about that one. It's a great football present. But
That's why I got a C plus.
But my boy Blue, I mean, yes, was not his best night. I mean, even, like we talked about, the first interception was not his fault. It was not. But he threw it, a little behind Andre Roberts. Roberts had two hands on it. But we haven't even really seen that type of stuff from Josh Allen. Every throw, really, the whole year has kind of been on the money. So between that, the really bad interception to Malcolm Butler, where I don't know if he didn't see him and he was blinded or someone, that was a bad one. And, of course, that set up the short field for the Tennessee Titans too. But the drops, and then, hey, there was a few that I'm going to put the drops on Josh Allen. And I don't say this much, but there was a few throws where he just threw the ball too freaking hard. Like, there was a few throws over the middle that were 8 and 10 yards, and he just unleashed it, and it went through Stephon Diggs' hands one time and another time through Dawson Knox's hands, where I think they looked at him, they were just like, you threw that. It was 145 miles per hour, and I was 7 feet from you. So I think he got a little excited and flustered about the situation, the defense they were playing, all of that. Certainly not his best night, and the team around him didn't help him a whole lot either.
That's an amazing human reality of situations like that. You get frustrated. It manifests itself in different ways. You try to do too much, and you just, you're mad about the way things are going, and you just throw the football a little bit harder just because you're mad, right? And it's all part of the challenge of channeling and harnessing and controlling your emotions. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And that's one of the criticisms,
sure,
right? And he's blamed himself for the emotion that came out as the lead, 28-3, the most dangerous lead in football, was disintegrating for the Bills against the Rams. He got emotional. He drew a penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct for, as he told me after the game, using some bad language to the ref that he shouldn't have used. And look, football's an emotional game. I don't know how you turn it off. When you're out there and you're getting hit and you're getting chased and things are happening and guys are yelling at you and they're talking crap and you're still young, how can you turn it off? We saw Tom Brady, 43 years old, blow a gasket on Thursday night.
Right.
You can't turn that off.
No, it is. It's tough to turn off. It's something, again, that hopefully he learns from. We've seen him learn from everything so far, to where the next time he's in that moment, he can, whatever you have to do, take a deep breath, realize, okay, yeah, we're down 21-10. It's not the end of the world. We'll be okay. We're still in this. I think, it compounded itself a little bit last night. I think it was the first game where the whole year they were a little bit like, wait, where's our 30 and 40-yard completions at? Like, so I think they all got frustrated. They're like, what? We got to throw the ball 6 yards again? I mean, nobody's done that to them this year. So I think that led to the frustration as well. And we saw Tennessee with all these three-man rushes, dropping people and doing all that. The other thing, Buffalo has an issue. Buffalo can't run. They can't run the football. So when a defense plays like that, they got to have something there. And they're missing their Zach Moss, who they drafted in the 4th round, who I think is a really good running back. But you see last night, like Yeldon and Singletary, hey, they're solid, but they leave a lot of meat on the bone, especially Singletary. And that's why they drafted Zach Moss. And that's another aspect of that team that I'm shocked by, because just McDermott, his first few years was all about run and play defense. And it's just totally flipped 180 here this year to where it's no defense, we can't run the ball, and we're awesome at throwing the ball, and we're kind of like the greatest show on turf type of team right now, which I find it amazing about a Sean McDermott team.
Yeah, and TJ Yeldon had 7 carries, 52 yards last night. Singletary, 11 carries for 25, and Josh Allen added 18. So, look, that's not the way to win football games. You can't rely on your passing game. You can't be one-dimensional. You have to be able to establish something with the running game, and you got to have the horses to take advantage of whatever is there. The Bills now, how concerned are you? What's your level? 1 to 10, with 10 being the most.
I think I'm still like, if 10's the most concerning, I'm about a 5, but I think the thing I look at a little bit with them right now that kind of just hit me last night, where I just go, okay, I think they're going to really have to win with their offense every week. I kind of kept thinking maybe the defense would come around and they'd figure it out. But we talked about, lack of, marquee pass rushers, D linemen in general, nobody making plays. Ed Oliver's been a disappointment as a top 10 pick from the 2019 draft. We didn't really hear any of the big players' names last night. Of course, Tre'Davious White was hurt, but I'm just concerned that it seems like every game is going to be like, hey, Josh Allen, you're going to have to win it, and it's going to be about our passing game and us doing that. And that is where it can be fun. It can be great, and they're going to get in the playoffs, but I just don't know if they can win a Super Bowl or get to a Super Bowl that way with the way this team looks right now.
Yeah, and they still have to deal with the Patriots twice. And before that, they have to deal with the Kansas City Chiefs.
The Seahawks are there. The Steelers are waiting for them. The 49ers are waiting for them. So they got a long road ahead of them still here.
Steelers, Titans, the last 2 undefeated teams in the AFC, and one of the reasons that they are the last 2, their Week 4 game wasn't played. That's coming up in a week and a half. Steelers, Titans, they may still be the only 2 undefeated teams in the AFC when they get together in Week 7.
Yeah.
So some good stuff coming up. You mentioned the Malcolm Butler interception.
Right.
It was a 68-yard return. According to Next Gen Stats, Malcolm Butler traveled 101.8 yards on the play, the most in-play distance traveled on an interception return this season. And, you talked earlier about the pass that caromed off the hands of Andre Roberts. And, John Brown wasn't there last night. Tre'Davious White wasn't there either.
That's right.
I think it hurt the Bills to not have that key piece on either side of the ball.
No doubt. You're exactly right. I mean, it's just one less matchup Tennessee had to worry about at the wide receiver position. That's the beauty of Buffalo. You stop Diggs, you stop Beasley. All right, well, the John Brown's over there. He's got a favorable matchup. It's just hard to match up with them all across the board, let alone even if you want to play those deep dropping zones. John Brown, shallow crosses, things like that. He's very good at catching those type of balls and, turning it upfield for gains that way. And we know Tre'Davious White is their best corner. That's an issue in Buffalo. As you can see, they're not real deep at the corner position, and he's really their only marquee corner they got to play a guy like A.J. Brown or another big-time receiver. So, they were not at their best. I think if they played again, I don't think that the results would be the same. I think this game, I still think if they played again and, Buffalo is a little bit more on their A game, that this would still be a very close football game. And I still have confidence that Buffalo would be able to move the ball on them if at full strength and healthy.
Let's get back to the point we made earlier about the motivation that the Titans have somehow found in all of the criticism that they've been taking publicly for their apparent violations of the COVID-19 protocols. Here's Ryan Tannehill after the game talking about how they use that as a source for anger, frustration, and ultimately preparation.
Yeah, we were under a lot of heat. Honestly, I didn't quite understand it for, why we were under such heat, personal things that were said against our team, our guys, and really felt uncalled for. So, yeah, we were a little ticked off about how we've been treated, how we've been looked at over the past couple of weeks. And we really just stuck together through that process and believed in each other and wanted to come out and play our game and play how we believe in each other and knew what we could do. And we did that.
They hated. They were angry at us. They thought we did everything wrong. Don't put us in adversity. Scratch all day, match all late.
That was first Ryan Tannehill and then Taylor Lewan. I don't know what personal things were said. Who was saying personal things?
I guess
we definitely would have written about it at PFT. We like it when it gets personal. Personal sells.
I think they got probably the backlash for people saying they were being selfish by having the workouts and doing that. And I'm guessing that. I don't know if I necessarily saw like articles or things like that attacked them personally. But, when you look at comments and things on social media, people got them that way. I guess that's what they're talking about.
We don't pay attention to those things. We don't listen to the outside noise.
Right,
except when we can use it to our benefit to get us all juiced up and fired up and ready to go play. That's when Mike Vrabel prints them out and staples them to the wall of the locker room so we can all see what people are saying.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.